Well, I got coleslaw on my mind here, so I'm wandering around out in the cabbage patch, looking around, see if I can find myself a delicious looking cabbage. And this guy right here at my foot looks like a pretty good candidate.
So here we got a cabbage cutting knife made in Portugal. Apparently the Portuguese must eat a lot of cabbage. And so that's a special knife just for this job. It's nice. Take it, stick it down there in the base, turn it like that, and it comes right off. Isn't that beautiful? Then we can take the cabbage and we can tap it just like this, going around, and cut back the big leaves. Take it off so we get down to that nice smooth head like the one you find in the supermarket. There we go. Isn't that sweet? Just look at that little guy. Oh, it's beautiful. Oh, moisture running off of it. Is that gorgeous or what, huh? Let's get the stump off there. Make a picture perfect cabbage head. There we go. Beautiful. Cabbage knife. Cabbage. Now to the kitchen for coleslaw.
So here we are inside Bill's kitchen. I have a cutting board. I have a French knife here in my hand. Required materials. I have the head of cabbage that we picked in the garden just a bit ago. I've got a good size mixing bowl right here. I usually use one larger than I really need to avoid splashing. That helps a lot. So I like to use a nice rice vinegar when I'm making coleslaw. It's mild. This has a little bit of sugar and salt in it. It's the same kind of thing you use when you're making sushi. That would be my first choice, but if you like apple cider vinegar is also an excellent choice for making coleslaw. Otherwise, the other ingredients that we use here are a good quality mayonnaise, a little bit of yellow prepared mustard. You don't need much, but just a little bit. And then a little bit of table sugar. I got some good Maui organic sugar in there. Alrighty, so after we get all our ingredients lined up here, the first thing I do is just go ahead and find the center of the cabbage, take the knife and push it right on down through this guy. So we cut the stem right in two like that. Now I'm going to use half of the cabbage for this job. I'll set the other half aside. I'll make something else with it later on. And so then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reach in here and make a dart underneath this core, just like that. So here I've cut a V-shaped dart around the core of the cabbage. I just lift that right out of there, and see, now we've got rid of the core. Now we can cut everything else up. This is really one premium homegrown cabbage. You can see here that there's very little air inside there. This thing is just tight as a drum. It's exactly the way you want to see your cabbages. Cabbages that grew like that's probably going to taste nice and sweet too. Now I'm going to start on the butt end or the stem end of the cabbage with my my knife right here, and I'm just going to start cutting straight across this thing, just like that. Cutting probably about 1/8 inch wide or smaller strings out of the cabbage right across the leaves. Now I could use a food processor for this. I have one, but I've used it before when making coleslaw, and I just don't think a food processor gives you the right cut. The only way to get a really good cut on slaw is by doing it with a knife. That's kind of too bad because it's time consuming, but whatever it takes, man, because a good batch of coleslaw is something to be proud of. I like coleslaw. I think it's just a wonderful food. It's something we can bring right straight in from the garden with these cabbages. I don't have to turn on the stove. I don't have to heat up the kitchen. None of that stuff. We just lay the old cabbage on down here on the cutting board and just start cutting away at it. Now I got the last bit here on the end of the cabbage, and I'm going to turn that the opposite direction like this. So it doesn't start falling over on me, and then I'm going to cut strings out of that too, so I get the finest possible slice here. the thinner you cut these cabbage strings, the easier it is to actually get this done properly. Okay, now we have all the cabbage cut in these real nice strings here. Take a close up there, you can see what we've done to that cabbage. It's cut into really nice fine threads. Now I'm going to take the cabbage, kind of hold it together here with my hands, and I'm going to cut 90 degrees to that across the pile. And again, the smaller you cut across the pile, the less cutting you're going to have to do in the long run, but you don't really have to worry too much about this because we're going to get down to some dicing here in a few minutes. But I like to make the first cut and the cross cut as fine as possible, then I do the least chopping through the rest of the process. Alright, so here you can see I've gone ahead and we've cut across the pile now. So I've gone one way and I've gone the other way. Next, I'm going to grab hold of the back end of the knife like this, and I'm just going to start doing this thing with it. So I kind of chop about 45 degrees across the pile now. Since I went one way, then I went 90 degrees to it. Now I go at 45 degrees, and that gives us even smaller fragments. Well, it looks like we're starting to get there now. I'm getting a pretty good small particle going on here, a couple of larger ones. A few larger ones in the mix aren't going to hurt anything anyway. In general, you want your particles to be about that size. Okay. So there's a real good slaw-sized particle. Okay, next thing we're going to do then is I'm going to take the mixing bowl here and pull the cutting board out over the edge of the counter a bit. Put the mixing bowl underneath it, and I'm going to scrape my cabbage off into the bowl. Alright, there we go. Have a goodly pile of cabbage in our bowl. I'll clean the rest off the knife there. Okay, so next thing we do is we're going to take some of the rice vinegar, and I'm going to dash about a tablespoonful. Okay, so we used half of a medium-sized cabbage and about a tablespoonful of vinegar here. Okay, so I got myself a mixing spoon out. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm also going to put in maybe about a teaspoon and a half to a teaspoon of prepared mustard right there in the middle. And then on the mayo, I'd say for half a cabbage, I'd use about 2 spoons like this. So these are serving size spoons that you might put out on the table with mashed potatoes or peas or something. There you go, that looks just about right. Keep the spoon over there in the jar in case I need a little bit more. The one other thing we're going to do here is I'm going to use a couple of teaspoons of a Maui organic sugar in here. You can use any old kind of sugar you want, and in fact, if you don't want to use sugar, you don't have to. That's probably enough. The vinegar, on the other hand, it adds a bit of tang for sure, but what it does more than anything is it preserves the cabbage. You put that vinegar right on the freshly cut slaw, the cabbage sucks it in a little bit and kind of acidifies things in here, so it doesn't oxidize and go bad as fast. You'll find your slaw may last a good 3-4 days in storage in the refrigerator if you put a little vinegar into the mix. Oftentimes I find that things will start happening inside the vegetable if I don't use an acid in this bowl. Okay, looks good here. I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing. Some of the judgment is made by the moisture appearance of the product. You see here that it's got a glistening look to it. All right, you can see that the mayonnaise is pretty well coating all the particles here. We got a white smear around the side of the bowl. That's the dressing. So we're pretty close. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this a taste test here. So we'll test drive it with a sampling spoon and see what we think. Oh man, that's good. Oh, that's good. Gee, here I thought maybe doing this on camera I might get a little bit nervous and muff my recipe up, but no such thing. So I guess we use 2 of these spoons here in the mayo. Probably right around a 1/2 cup measure on the mayo to a 1/2 a head of cabbage. About a teaspoon of the mustard. Maybe a tablespoon of the vinegar. And then teaspoon and a half or 2 to the sugar that went in there. All this is somewhat flexible. It'll depend. Sometimes the cabbage is a little wetter, and so you don't need as much liquid materials in there. It'll spread out better. This cabbage appears to be fairly wet. The moisture is weeping out of it now, making pretty good dressing. So the next thing to do is I'll just take this and I'm going to put it inside the refrigerator and chill it down for about an hour. That seems to make it just a little better. Cabbage is kind of warm because we just brought it in from the sun. So I'm going to put it away for a little while, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to serve this with Kahlua style turkey that's been pulled off the bone, so it's pulled turkey basically. And we're going to have a coleslaw, and I'm going to have some steamed brown rice. That'll be dinner tonight. Cabbage is a pretty ancient food. It's been around, oh my goodness, I believe even since Roman times in one form or another. But the nutritional content of this stuff is often overlooked, I believe, by modern people. Looking at Google over here, I see that they're talking like a decent sized serving has 2% of the vitamin A, 54% of the vitamin C. We're talking oranges, cabbages, huh? You know, I mean, everybody thinks of orange juice, but no, cabbage. It has vitamin K in there, 85% of it. Thiamine, you got 4%, riboflavin 2%, niacin 1%, B6 6%, folic acid, you got 10% of your intake. Pregnant women, that's important, you know. But this stuff's got calcium, it's got iron, it's got magnesium, phosphorus, sodium, zinc, copper, manganese, selenium. Well, my goodness, there's even some omega-6 fatty acids in here. It's good stuff. Really, eat more cabbage, be healthy, live longer, play more slide guitar, and work towards world peace.